Hello. A lot of people say that this game is unbalanced, and they are correct. There's a lot of reasons for that, but today I want to go over attributes and how elemental resistances and elemental attacks, skill damage, and defense all work. A lot of people are very wrong about how they all work and what they entail. First, I bring you to all of the void intercepts. We have each monster, and then we have the attribute resistance they are resistant to. So electric is going to be very strong against itself, as is everything, and then very weak against toxic, and normal against chill. And this brings us to the balance. Let me get out of your way. I'm shrinking! Here we have the 5 elements. Fire attack is weak against electric element. This is an elemental attack inverse of the resistance charts in game, because looking at the resistance and then saying it's very strong is weird to me, so I've made this for myself. At least the elements are balanced in the standard sense. However, if we go to the game, we will see that only 1, 2, 3 hard mode bosses are actually either normal or weak in some form against ice. There are only 3 bosses in the game that are not either very strong or strong against ice. I'll go into how much very strong and normal there is of a difference between them. It's gluttony. All strong, normal, weak, and very weak. All this actually means is the attribute distribution of the enemy's resistances. So gluttony is chill, and it says fire is very strong against him. All this means is that fire is the lowest attribute score in the list against gluttony, which is an ice type. And he is very resistant to the ice attack, which would make the ice attack weak against him. Chill resistance is 5.2 times higher. However, due to how resistance and defense works, this doesn't mean he's going to take 5 times less damage from a ice attack. This equates to gluttony taking about double the damage from fire as they would from chill, assuming the attack is the same skill power modifier. That brings us to the next thing. How skills and guns work. Conversely, this would make non-attribute the strongest in the game, because not only is everything normal to non-attribute, not only would this make Vyessa the weakest by weighted category of all descendants, it would make the 7 non-attribute types in the game the strongest, because the weight is not evenly distributed throughout the attributes. So I just wanted to go over how attributes work. Now to go over the difference between attributes and defense. So here we have defense, fire, chill, electric, and resistance. This non-attribute is not on the list. That is because there are no non-attribute enemies. There's no need to have a resistance to non-attribute. The only non-attribute attacks come from descendants. How defense and resistance works, once again, they are separate. Defense, for instance, on the monster side is taken into account your gun. So a perforator with 67,092 attack will deal 67,000 damage to an enemy. And then the defense is essentially a score that measures your damage reduction. The damage reduction goes weighted against the attack, and the attack comes in and then is mitigated by the enemy's damage reduction determined by their defense. If I have an attack that has 997% skill power, that would mean that my skill power times my base skill power boost ratio times any other applicable boost ratios multiplied times 9.971 is the amount of damage that I would do. Then, if the game is so inclined to bless me with a skill critical hit, I would deal 1.2 times that. And then it would be weighted against the Executioner's chill resistance only. His defense has no part into how much damage I'm doing with a skill attack. And the same is for Descendants. The enemy's attacks are weighted. So the reason Dead Bride is such a good test subject is particular because of 2 attacks. First, this attack does 100% physical damage against my defense. This attack is weighted with both elemental and attack in it. And then this attack is 100% elemental damage. That is why Dead Bride is such a good test against this. So before, the Ice Globe did 117 damage. Now my defense is 30,000 and my elemental resistance is the same. I had to lower the quality of the video because I have like 97 apps open, all testing stuff. So sorry for the frame rate issues earlier. And as we see, this damage does a little bit less than last time because that attack is most likely both physical attack and elemental attack. And this attack does the same amount of damage after tripling my defense. If we go and we put cold antibody on, just to let everyone know that the poly antibody, completely useless, don't use it. I'm not going to fully level this thing up because gross. I'm using normal Dead Bride because I can do this with no modules on my Descendant. So 117 damage is what we took with 0 cold resistance and maxing out our defense. Whenever we put cold resistance on, that 117 becomes 90. So this empirically proves that there is a difference between physical damage and elemental attack. So if you're finding yourself getting specifically killed by one attack in the game, you might be able to slot for that specific attack against that specific enemy. However, I don't think you should do this because there's too many things that can happen, and if you start building against every enemy every season, it's gonna suck. Enemy bosses also have a firearm attack and a electric attack. This would essentially be their skill power, and you can think of every attack that they have having a skill power modifier as well. I'm not sure the ratio of the Executioner's sword attack, but I know it is both of these. So it probably has a skill power modifier and a firearm attack modifier combined into that one attack. And that is why defense feels so useless, because it only defends against half of it, which is again why the double your defense, take 10% less damage was accurate, because if you source all damage and half of it is coming from physical attacks, then when you double your defense, you'll take 10% less from all damage. And this I did not know at the time when I was doing my defense video. I didn't know how things worked. We were too early into the game. I just knew that if I took 100 attacks, doubled my defense against those 100 attacks, I always took about 10% less damage. Against attacks with no element, this equates to about taking 20% less damage when you double your defense. But against attacks with no physical, it equates to you taking 0% less damage. And this is how defense and attribute damage work in the game. Non-attribute resistance will always be the normal type damage resistance on the boss. So a non-attribute attack against Dead Bride will do the same amount of damage that an electric attack would have done against Dead Bride, assuming they are both the same stats and skill power modifiers on the skill that you hit Dead Bride with. In summary for the video, the only enemies in the game that are not resistant to the only chill Descendant in the game are Executioner, Pyromancer, but at least you have the Molten Fortress as well. Every other enemy in the game is resistant to chill in some form or way. And firstly, one of the reasons why Lepic feels just so strong, and he was the favorited this entire season, because he either is normal or has a strong or very strong type advantage to every boss except for 3 bosses in the game, which is why Lepic feels so strong. Frostwalker Lepic is essentially doing double damage. Bullets in the game only attack the enemy's defense, and the Descendant's elemental resistances are only weighted against the elemental attack of the enemy they're fighting. The firearm attack from the enemy is the only thing that hits the Descendant's defense. Roughly half the damage in the game will come from elemental, and half the damage in the game will come from defense. Depending on the monster you're fighting, that's going to be a little bit less than half and a little bit more than half sometimes. But regardless of the weight of resistances from the enemy to the Descendant, defense is only mitigating some of the damage. And some attacks are mitigated 0% by defense, which is sometimes whenever you increase your defense, you just get 1 shot anyway, and whenever you increase your elemental resistance, you just get 1 shot anyway. If you're going to build into survival, build into survival. The first Descendant wants you to either be a tank or a glass cannon or some kind of controller class in the game. They have balanced the game on purpose this way, in my opinion. That's all I really wanted to say about that. So everyone have a sick day and peace out.